The cold wind rushed through the busy streets as people hurried past, barely noticing the young girl standing on the sidewalk. She held a worn-out cardboard sign with shaky hands, her eyes scanning the crowd, hoping for a little kindness. Her clothes were tattered, her cheeks flushed from the biting air, but she stood there with quiet determination. Most pedestrians walked by without a second glance, too caught up in their own lives to notice her. But then someone stopped. Someone unexpected. Johnny Depp, the world-famous actor, had just stepped out of a nearby cafe when his eyes landed on the girl. There was something about her, something different. At first, it seemed like any other heartbreaking scene in the city, another lost soul struggling to get by. But as he looked closer, he felt a strange pull, an unshakable feeling that this wasn't just another passing moment. He adjusted his sunglasses, taking a step closer, his curiosity getting the better of him. The girl noticed him too, her eyes widening slightly. She wasn't screaming his name like a fan or asking for an autograph. Instead, she simply held up her sign. "Please help." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but there was strength in it. Johnny knelt down, meeting her gaze. He had seen a lot in his lifetime: fame, fortune, the best and worst of people. But something about her seemed different. There was a hidden story in her eyes, something she wasn't saying. "Hey there," he said gently. "What's your name?" She hesitated, glancing around as if making sure no one else was listening. Then, in a soft, almost secretive voice, she spoke her name. But that wasn't what caught Johnny off guard. It was what came next. A chill ran down his spine as he realized what she had just told him. This wasn't just a random encounter. This wasn't just a young girl in need. This was something much, much bigger. What had he just uncovered? And what was he about to do next? Johnny studied the girl's face, his mind racing. There was something about her eyes, something familiar. But that made no sense. How could he possibly know her? He had never seen her before, yet deep down, an uneasy feeling crept over him. The way she spoke, the way she looked around nervously, as if afraid someone might be watching. It wasn't just about being homeless. There was more to it. The girl hesitated before answering, shifting on her feet. "Lily," she finally said, barely above a whisper. Johnny nodded, offering a reassuring smile. "Lily, huh? That's a beautiful name." He wanted to ease her nerves, but he could see she was still on edge. His gut told him to keep digging. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. Lily bit her lip and looked down at her worn-out shoes. "A while," she murmured. "I don't really have anywhere else to go." Her voice was steady, but Johnny could hear something hidden beneath it: fear. This wasn't just a story of bad luck. There was something else, something she wasn't saying. He had met many people struggling on the streets, but Lily didn't fit the usual pattern. She wasn't just lost. She was hiding. Johnny glanced around. The city was alive with people, taxis honking, groups chatting as they walked by, but no one was paying attention to them. Still, he felt like someone was watching. He shifted slightly, trying to shake the feeling. "Where's your family?" he asked carefully. Lily stiffened. It was subtle, but Johnny caught it. She was scared. Her fingers gripped the wooden handle of her sign tighter. She shook her head, looking away. "I don't have one," she said quickly. Too quickly. Johnny knew that tone. It wasn't that she didn't have a family. It was that she didn't want to talk about them. He had no idea what she had been through, but something in him refused to just walk away. "Lily," he said softly, "is someone looking for you?" Her eyes darted up, wide and panicked. That was all the answer he needed. Johnny felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just about a girl needing food or shelter. Something was wrong. And now, whether he planned to or not, he was involved. But who was she running from? And why did he feel like time was running out? Johnny felt his heartbeat quicken as he watched the fear in Lily's eyes. She wasn't just a girl struggling to survive. She was running from something. Or someone. And that realization made his grip on reality tighten. He had met a lot of people in his life, seen all kinds of hardship, but this felt different. Lily took a small step back, as if regretting how much she had already said. Johnny noticed the way her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from something deeper. He could feel her hesitation, the silent debate going on in her head. Could she trust him? Should she tell him the truth? He sighed, rubbing his hands together. "Listen, kid," he said gently. "You don't have to tell me everything. But if you need help, real help, you've got to let someone in." Lily hesitated, then glanced over her shoulder. Johnny followed her gaze, scanning the crowd. A group of people walked by, chatting loudly, but nothing seemed out of place. Yet she looked like she expected something, or someone, to appear at any moment. I didn't mean to cause trouble," she said quickly. "I just needed enough money to get away." "Get away from what?" Johnny pressed. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she lowered her sign and hugged it close to her chest. "I shouldn't have stopped here," she whispered. "It's not safe." Not safe? Johnny's jaw tightened. The city was full of dangers, but this felt personal. His mind raced with possibilities. Was she being followed? Had she escaped something worse? "Lily, if you're in danger, we need tow." Before he could finish, Lily's entire body tensed. Her breath hitched, and she suddenly turned away. Johnny's instincts kicked in. He turned his head just in time to see a man standing across the street, his hands stuffed into the pockets of a dark coat. He wasn't moving, wasn't even pretending to blend in. He was watching. And it wasn't just a passing glance. His gaze was locked onto Lily. Johnny felt a surge of protectiveness he hadn't expected. Whoever that man was, he wasn't just a stranger. Lily's entire body language screamed one thing: she knew him. And she was terrified. "Lily," Johnny said, keeping his voice low and calm. "Do you know that man?" She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the edge of her sign. "Yes," she whispered. "And if he sees me with you, we're both in trouble." Johnny's pulse quickened, but he forced himself to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't help either of them. He could see the fear in Lily's eyes, the way her body tensed like she was ready to run. But running wasn't an option, not when the man across the street had already seen her. Johnny kept his voice steady. "All right, we're going to walk away from here. Slowly. Don't look back. Just stay close to me, okay?" Lily nodded, gripping her sign tightly as if it was the only thing grounding her. Johnny draped his jacket over her small shoulders, hoping it would help her blend in more. Then, without another word, they started moving. The street was busy, filled with people and noise, but Johnny couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He resisted the urge to turn around too soon. If that man was following them, the last thing they needed was to make it obvious that they knew. "Lily," he murmured as they walked. "Who is he?" She hesitated, her breath shaky. "Someone I thought I got away from." That answer didn't sit right with Johnny. Whoever this man was, he wasn't just some distant figure from her past. He was here now, watching, waiting. They turned the corner onto a quieter street. Johnny finally stole a glance over his shoulder. The man was moving now, slipping through the crowd, following at a steady pace. His posture was too controlled, too deliberate. He wasn't just another pedestrian. He was hunting. Johnny clenched his jaw. He had dealt with all kinds of people in Hollywood, the good, the bad, and the downright dangerous. He could read people well, and everything about this man screamed trouble. Lily's steps quickened. "He's not going to stop," she whispered. Johnny exhaled sharply. He had two options: keep moving and hope they lost him, or confront this head-on. But before he could decide, Lily suddenly stopped, gripping his arm. "No," she breathed. "It's not just him." Johnny followed her gaze and felt a cold wave wash over him. Two more figures had appeared at the end of the block, standing by a parked car. They weren't moving yet, but they were watching. They were trapped. Johnny's mind raced. He wasn't just protecting a scared girl. He was up against something bigger. And now there was no turning back. Johnny's mind raced as he took in the two new figures waiting at the end of the block. This wasn't a coincidence. They weren't just random people standing around. They were part of this. Whoever they were, whatever they wanted with Lily, they had planned for this moment. And now they were closing in. Lily's grip on his arm tightened. Her breathing was shallow, her body stiff. "Johnny, what do we do?" He forced himself to think fast. Running wasn't an option, not with them blocking the way ahead. And turning back meant heading straight toward the man they had already seen. They needed an escape, fast. "Come on," he whispered, pulling her toward a small alleyway between two buildings. It wasn't ideal, but it was their best shot at losing them. The space was narrow, cluttered with trash bins and delivery crates. Johnny guided Lily through carefully, glancing over his shoulder every few steps. He knew they didn't have much time before those men figured out where they had gone. They emerged on the other side, stepping into the back lot of an old diner. The smell of coffee and grilled food lingered in the air. A back door stood slightly open, propped by a wooden crate. Johnny didn't hesitate. He nudged Lily inside and followed, shutting the door quietly behind them. The kitchen was busy, but no one seemed to notice them slip in. Cooks worked over steaming stoves, waitresses rushed past with trays of food, and the steady hum of conversation filled the air. Johnny pulled Lily to a quiet corner near the supply shelves, keeping his voice low. "All right, we're safe for now," he said, trying to steady her nerves. "But you need to tell me what's going on. Who are these people?" Lily shook her head, pressing her back against the wall as if trying to disappear. "I thought I was done with them," she whispered. "I thought I got away." Johnny's stomach tightened. This wasn't just about someone looking for a runaway. There was something bigger at play. Before he could press further, the door they had just come through creaked open again. Johnny barely had time to react before a deep voice cut through the noise. "You shouldn't have interfered." He turned sharply, his body tensing. One of the men from the street was standing there now, his cold gaze locked onto them. And that's when Johnny realized this wasn't just about Lily. Now they were after him too. Johnny felt his muscles tense as he stepped protectively in front of Lily. The man blocking the door was calm, too calm. That kind of confidence only came from knowing you had the upper hand. Johnny could feel it in the way he stood, the way his cold stare locked onto them like they were already caught. Lily clutched his sleeve, her whole body trembling. "Please," she whispered. "We have to go." Johnny didn't wait. In a single movement, he grabbed a metal tray from the supply shelf and sent it crashing to the floor. The noise sent a ripple of chaos through the kitchen. Cooks turned, waitresses gasped, and someone shouted. It was enough. "Run," he told Lily, pushing her toward the diner's front exit. She hesitated only for a second before sprinting forward. Johnny followed, weaving through startled customers as the man behind them shoved past tables, his heavy footsteps closing in. They burst through the door onto the busy street. The city lights flickered above, the sound of passing cars roaring in their ears. Johnny scanned their surroundings, looking for anything, anywhere to hide. But before he could move, a black car screeched to a stop just ahead. The two men they had seen earlier stepped out, their expressions unreadable. Lily gasped, stepping back. "No," she muttered. "Not them." Johnny instinctively placed himself between her and the men. He didn't know who they were, but he knew one thing: he wasn't letting them take her. Then something unexpected happened. The taller man reached into his coat, not for a weapon, but for a badge. "Lily," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "You're not in trouble. We've been looking for you." Johnny's heart pounded. Cops. Then who was the man inside the diner? Why was she so afraid? Lily shook her head violently. "No, they're lying. They." A sudden crash behind them made them all turn. The man who had been chasing them was now struggling against two uniformed officers who had appeared out of nowhere. One of the cops shoved him against the wall. "Got him," he shouted to the others. Johnny turned back to the men in front of them, still trying to make sense of what was happening. One of them sighed. "She's been on the missing persons list for months," he explained. "She escaped from a trafficking ring. We've been tracking these guys for years." Johnny felt the air leave his lungs. He looked at Lily, who was frozen in shock. One of the officers approached gently. "Lily, it's over. You're safe now." She blinked, as if struggling to believe it. Then slowly she turned to Johnny, tears welling in her eyes. "You really helped me," she whispered. "Thank you." Johnny let out a slow breath, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're going to be okay now," he said. And for the first time, he truly believed it. But as the officers led the captured man away, Johnny couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to this story. More people like Lily out there, waiting for someone to notice. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't done helping yet. The night air felt different now, lighter, as if the weight of fear had finally lifted. The flashing red and blue lights from the police cars painted the street in sharp bursts of color. People had gathered nearby, murmuring to each other, but Johnny didn't care about the stares. His focus was on Lily. She stood there, wrapped in a warm blanket an officer had given her, staring at the ground like she was still trying to process everything. The fear in her eyes had faded, replaced by something softer. Relief. Maybe even hope. One of the detectives approached Johnny, offering a nod of gratitude. "You did the right thing," he said. "If you hadn't stepped in, who knows what would have happened." Johnny glanced at Lily, then back at the detective. She was brave. She saved herself. I just helped her find the way. Lily looked up at him then, her eyes filled with emotion. "No one ever stopped for me before," she said, her voice quiet. "I thought people like you didn't exist." Johnny felt a lump in his throat. He had spent years in the spotlight, living in a world of scripts and cameras. But none of it felt as real as this moment. Well, he said with a small smile, "Now you know they do." A woman from social services arrived shortly after, speaking to Lily in a kind, patient voice. She explained that they had found her aunt, a relative she hadn't seen in years, who had been searching for her. Lily's face lit up with something close to disbelief. "You mean I have somewhere to go?" she asked hesitantly. The woman nodded. "A safe place. With family." For the first time that night, Lily smiled. It was small, uncertain, but real. As they prepared to leave, she turned back to Johnny. Without a word, she stepped forward and hugged him tightly. He hesitated for just a second before hugging her back. "Thank you," she whispered. Johnny nodded. "Stay strong, kid." And with that, she was gone, stepping into the car that would take her to a new beginning. Johnny watched until the vehicle disappeared down the street. He took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. The world was full of stories like Lily's, people overlooked, needing someone to see them. Maybe he couldn't save everyone. But tonight he had saved one. and that was enough.